I think hemp and hempcrete could play a role in reducing the embodied energy of new houses, as well as the operational energy, so the energy consumed to heat and to cool our houses.
Scott Barnes, how can we describe our industry? Are we cottage? Are we fledgling? Are we hopeful? Are we potential? We're sort of punching above our weight because we feel that we've got all this potential, but we've got to be able to explain that better. And to attract investment, it's got to be really right on that game. Scott's going to be talking to us about the Race for Business and Homes programs within the Race for 2030 approach, where there is some interesting industry funding available. So, obviously we're halfway through the 2030. We've got to pull out all the stops to get in there. How can we identify and understand the barriers that are stopping us scaling, and how can we address them? And Scott's going to have some insightful ideas for us, hopefully. No pressure, Scott, but if you can just solve a whole lot of things for us.
I ask you to indulge me with a thought question first? So 25 years ago, I moved to a farm in Manitoba, Canada. It was in spring and the temperature was still minus 20 degrees Celsius. The ground was obviously at that temperature, frozen solid. Outside clearly was cold, but I was never cold in the house. I guess you know where I'm coming from. I grew up in Sydney, 90 kilometres northwest of the city, and I was regularly cold through winter, like every night, every time you go to the bathroom. The condensation would run down the windows. Now, you are asking, of course, how's this relevant to who I am and what I'm talking about? Well, what stood out to me at that time was that both houses, again, we're talking 25 years ago, were heated by oil. So I'm talking about my parents' house in Sydney, and it was heated using a 600 litre tank of oil, which we filled once a year. And that managed to heat one room for about 3 hours for perhaps 3 months of the year, but probably not that much. It was pretty expensive even back then. And by comparison, the house in Manitoba, remember I said it was spring. It went from minus 40 in winter. It was cold, seriously cold, for 5 or 6 months of the year, and that house was heated 24 hours a day for that period. They also used 600 litres of heating oil. The same energy value. So what is the difference? Well, clearly you know where I'm leading. I think hemp and hempcrete could play a role in reducing the embodied energy of new houses, as well as the operational energy, so the energy consumed to heat and to cool our houses. That's obviously a saving in dollars, it's a saving in carbon emissions. Now, I guess Richard hinted at a conversation that we had earlier. The industry currently, the hemp building industry, is very small. We're talking about a few hundred houses have been built to date. We need to be building thousands of houses per month across Australia. So my question to you is, what is preventing hemp from being used at that sort of scale? How do we get to the point where we are able to specify and build, supply the materials, the certification, the standards? How do we get it into the building code to be able to construct houses that have good thermal insulation, low embodied carbon, and so therefore use far less energy to heat and to cool? I am Scott Barnes, you can read that up there, and I represent Race for 2030. RACE is an acronym. Why wouldn't we have an acronym? Of course, we're in Australia. Renewable, affordable, clean energy. The rest of it is for 2030 is to say that we have an existence as a cooperative research centre, so that's a federally funded independent organisation. So once the federal government form a CRC, we are then independent of the government per se. But we do have to answer to the federal government. We have milestones to meet, and they relate to emission reduction and to energy cost savings to the consumer. So that consumer can, of course, be a business. It can be a private household. Our work, if you go to this website later, you will see is across 5 different streams. We have Race for Homes, Race for Business, Race for Transport, EVs, Race for Networks, and Race across the community, so that for the change. So this is around education, which we've also heard about today. In terms of why timing is important, I guess there's no time like today, but from the point of view of race, and if you want to access any of the funds that we have available to match industry funding to do research, there is limited time, because clearly you can't start a 3-year project as our CRC winds up. You've got to start it 3 years before the end of the CRC. So that leaves you with 2 years to access funding through the Race for 2030 CRC. We are involved in a whole range of areas, and again, probably the best way to get a better understanding is to look at some of our past and current projects, but we do work that will address the routes to impacts, policy and regulations that may be barriers, and product research specifically. And I'll finish up later talking about how you might engage with race. A little bit of background, the corporate slide as it were, just showing the way we work. And I guess it probably is important to mention this, because as a CRC, each CRC develops their own process of engaging with industry. All CRCs do engage with industry, but many of them start off from their inception with industry partners and research partners, and they are fixed for the life of the CRC. CRCs in those cases typically are shorter than ours, so we have a 10-year CRC, we're halfway through it. We have fixed research partners, so I'm sorry, Trobe, you're not part of it, but that doesn't exclude you necessarily. But certainly we have a number of universities across Australia, 7 universities, and CSIRO as our research partners, you can see there. And we have an amount of money, and not as a grant system, but rather as a leverage. So basically, in rough terms, we can match industry funding to then do the research that will address the challenge that we together determine will help to unlock carbon emission reduction and energy savings in an industry-led approach. So it needs to be something that we can do now, and so by showing what we can do in a project that might go for 2 years or 6 months or 3 years, and being able to project that that will be scalable then to achieve thousands or millions of... So I guess I'm looking here at the stream Race for Homes, just to give you a little bit of a flavour for how different projects could come to be that might be of use to the hemp industry. There's obviously product development, work around lowering bills, and demand responses. So everything from behavioural science, understanding people's choice, through to government policy, through to actual construction methodologies or construction systems, matrices, for example, the harvesting process. I guess one thing that I maybe should share is that I actually had the benefit of having come into this space from an agricultural background, hence why I was working on farms in Canada. And so I have some understanding, at least, of the growth of hemp, of a plant, of soils, also of the fibre that's involved in the decortication process. So enough to be dangerous, perhaps, without knowing anything useful. That's a very wordy slide. I'll leave you to read it rather than trying to talk specifically to it. Again, these details are available on our website. What I'm really trying to point out is that hemp industry has been around for many years. I have been involved in conferences going back more than 10 years. It must be well more than that, I can't remember, to be honest, where we've talked about decortication, we've talked about fibre separation, we've talked about retting and growing, but it's still very small. So the challenge, and we've heard it today from both Ernesto and David, is that we need to do some things to really ramp that up if it's going to have an impact in the carbon space and in the energy space. It may be a great product, but it's only as good as the number of people who can benefit from it. One of the things that we've heard a number of times is the fact that we don't have standards, that we don't have policies, and there are barriers. So again, maybe there's some research that will actually help if this comes up as a Senate inquiry, to help them to know what it is that needs to be addressed in state policies or in federal policies or in building codes. So this can be a precursor then to a bigger piece of work that could lead to change to then place the hemp industry on a better footing. Just to give you a flavour for the breadth of work that Race has been involved in and currently is involved in, on the top right there, many of you may have seen the TV show, Renovate or Rebuild. We are currently funding a new TV program which will be released early next year, in a similar vein, and that's on improving the thermal performance of existing homes, which we've spoken about, and it's an area that I think hempcrete panels could actually have a very significant place to play. There's another project called Energy Upgrades for Australian Homes. It's about a $6 million project. We're halfway through that now. And that's looking at how do we make it possible to address the millions of homes that exist today and will still exist in another 50 years that are, like I was describing with my parents' house, terribly poor when it comes to thermal performance. And energy costs already are high, and we know for sure they're going to get higher. And those that are fortunate enough to be able to put solar panels on their roof and put a heat pump in may be able to reduce their energy cost. But if it leaks out into the atmosphere as fast as you pump it in, then you're going to run out of roof space pretty quickly before you can keep that house warm. Energy Upgrades for Australian Homes, this is just a quick snapshot of this project, which is currently, as I say, running. And I'm going to leave it at that because really I don't have the answers for you. It's more a case of saying that we exist. We are currently running CRC, so we have industry partners, we have money, but we need research projects. They can come from anybody. They can come from an industry group, they can come from an individual company, they can come from a university or other researchers. We also have international ties. I don't think we have any from New Zealand currently, but I would love the challenge of working with. Love the challenge. I know we have people here, but I don't think we have any research projects in race from New Zealand. So I'm saying, yep, I would love to change that. Okay. And we'll take questions after, I believe.
Yeah, we'll be right.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much.